Welcome back to Level Up. I'm John Cale. Thanks for taking time to listen in today. Hey, today is episode 2 of the one-word answer for success in life, which we've been talking about, which is communication. We talked a lot about that last time. I want to bring you back into to the session. Back with us today are 2 of the 3 guests that were with us the last time. My daughter, Whitney, here, and my son-in-law, Jeffrey, here. They were on the last episode, and we're going to dive in deeper to some other pieces to this and take a look at it. I think Stella's at home playing with the buns and whatever else. And when I mean buns, I mean her stuffed buns. And she's got bunnies. There's bunnies, not buns. So let me clarify that as we move forward. So anyway, I thought today we could start something very interesting. Why don't you just take your hands, put them above your head, put them together, start to hum. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. Just trying to get you to loosen up and relax a little bit. So it's great to have you guys here with us today. And I want to remind you, when we talk about the number one word that is making success in your life a reality, it's the word communication. And we talked last time about the fact that you cannot succeed in life without communicating. And if you learn this particular word, learn how to use it, learn how to function and interact with people, you're going to have a very successful life. So if you're feeling stuck, we talked about last time, this could be the roadblock. If you're feeling like you're up against a wall and you can't get anywhere, maybe it's communication, and you got to think about that. We also talk about the fact that guys have a bigger problem with this than girls. Girls tend to be a little bit better communicators than guys are. So guys, if you're back for episode 2, listen in, because this is all good stuff. Here's the word for today that we always have in our episodes. The word today is yield. The word is yield. And why the word yield? Well, when I say the word yield, do you see, if you drive, a yellow sign that says yield that you see when you're out on the roads in different places in life, right? The yield sign means to give way or surrender to allow another person to go first. That's what the word yield actually means. To give way or surrender to allow another person to go first. It seems to me that this is a word that in general in life today is not something most people practice a lot. We're not a society typically that wants to give way or surrender. Doesn't that word make you like surrender? Whoa, you got to stop for a second when you hear that word. What's that mean? Right? We're not a society that wants to give way or surrender or to allow another person to go first, right? We're all about, I got to do this. I got to do this now. I got to do it because the opportunity could be gone, right? I've got to take advantage of what I can do and get for me while I can. So a couple facts about communication we talked about, just to remind you before we jump into a couple other aspects of this. Number 1, good communication will separate you from the crowd. It's going to separate you from the crowd. Number 2, that it is the GPS for your life success. Don't put in the wrong address. It is for your life success. It is the GPS. So it will tell you and drive you where you need to go. Number 3, you can't get by it. You have to do it. You can't say, I'm going to do all these other things in life and I'm going to get good at everything else and decide communication is not a big deal. I don't know how. I don't have to be able to talk to people. Not going to happen. You have to do it. And the last thing is realize you might be uncomfortable with it. You're going to be uncomfortable, right? You're going to be in situations where you're going to be scared. You're going to be anxious. You're going to want to throw up. Who knows? But it's going to be uncomfortable and you're going to have to accept that as a fact. Okay. We had a couple quotes that I thought were powerful. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. That was by Bernard Shaw, who was a news anchor for CNN. So one of the big problems is that we talk to people, we think everything's cool. They smile, we walk away. Guess what? They didn't get it. They don't know what you're talking about. And then you're wondering, well, why didn't you do well, I didn't hear you. Right. So this is something that's really a big deal. That you think people are communicating with you and it's just an illusion. They're really not, right? That's a problem. And then one other one was that the biggest communication problem is that we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. How many of you listening today on this episode would say, that's me. When someone's talking to me, I'm hearing what they're saying But what I'm thinking the whole time they're speaking to me is, this is what I'm going to say back. When you shut up and give me a spot that I can say something, here it come. This is what's coming out, right? That's a problem, right? The problem is we don't listen to people to understand what they're saying and understand, what they're trying to communicate to us. We listen so that we have the option to reply. Okay. So there's some benchmarks from the last time. And with the word yield today, again, many of you have probably seen the yellow sign, right? To give way or surrender, to allow another to go first. My question is, how often do we give way? How many times do we allow other people to go first, right? Think about when you're driving and you see this sign. Apply it to your driving experience. I can tell you this, every time I'm on the freeway and I'm coming down the freeway and there's a yield sign, I'm coming at 65, 70 miles an hour and there's merging traffic coming on and you've got to yield for these people. Actually, I just realized recently that after driving for as many years as I have, I just realized that if I'm not mistaken, I have the right of way on the road. I don't have to slow down when people are trying to come into the road on the freeway, right? But I've always thought that I had to figure out how to slow down and let these people in. And actually, that becomes a problem if I yield, right, in the driving sense, because I could cause a traffic backup or a wreck. Because I'm slowing the main traffic to let this one guy get in from the side and yield to him. So we see those signs, and I really want you to think about when you see those signs. I really want you to think about this discussion we're having about communication, because whether you're 20 today, when you're 40, this conversation is still going to be very relevant to you. If you're 30 or 40 today, when you're 50 or 60. This conversation is still going to be relevant to you. So as long as they keep the yellow yield sign out there in the traffic, until someday they replace it with some crazy newfangled thing, when you see it, I want you to think about communication and how important this subject is going to be. Okay. One of the things I think that is a fact about this is that we really all want our own way. We want what we want now. We want to take our turn. And I think part of the problem with the generation right now is that there is a fear that you may miss out, that it's a sign of weakness if you yield to someone else, right? It may be a way that some of you were raised, right? You might not have been raised in an environment where you were taught how to yield to someone else or listen to someone else or let someone else go first, right? So there's a lot of differences there of facts around this whole discussion. And I'm wondering, Whitney and Jeff, do you guys see this? Whitney and Jeff are owners of a business that they have a considerable amount of employees that are almost Gen Zers, right? I mean, all of your employees are Gen Z. So they're dealing with folks like those of you who are listening to the podcast today on a daily basis in their business. And so what are some of the things that you guys see this with the crowd that you interact with? And why do you think it's so hard? Like when we talk about some of these things with yielding and just circumstances that you may have seen in the business, right? Where people are like, me first, or, obviously this comes into customer service, right? When you're dealing with people. So you guys want to share something there? Some thoughts around that?
Well, there's a couple different questions there. I guess in customer service, I find that a lot of times it's mostly, I think it would be they would yield, and there's not a lot of confidence there yet, probably due to the age, I would say, just being sure of themselves and having the confidence to know like, oh, I do know what I'm doing. I am competent. I can have a conversation and discuss what's happening, even though it's maybe not what this person's wanting to hear. I can talk them down, make it right, and kind of have confidence in what they're saying. So I'd say in a customer service situation, it's a little bit of confidence. And then also it's a little bit of that deeper thinking that maybe hasn't fully reached its peak, I guess you would say. So when you walk up, for example, in our business, it's a service business. So when we're greeting the customer, we always say, assume nothing, basically. Assume nothing, because chances are whatever you're assuming they know or assuming they get, they don't. They don't know what you mean when you say, someone's picking up. They don't know if you've done something online or called something in, or if you go and look to see if something's ready, they don't know it's waiting on more product to be ready, or this is part of the order's ready and the other isn't. Like, the customer doesn't know that. So elaborating, explaining, taking the extra step to kind of unpack that is something I would say that's a big gap in that area. And then also I would say they probably have trouble yielding because there's a lot of judgment in that age range. They're in an age bracket where there's a lot of competition. You know, what are you doing in school? What are you going to do after school? Who are you dating? Who are you not dating? Who likes you? Who doesn't? Where are you going? What are you doing? And what do you look like? There's a lot of pressure. So I think they're used to judgment. So I think their natural reaction is to be defensive and not yield, probably. So I think we found a lot in our interactions with them is starting with lowering the defenses out of the gate is really helpful. Hey, this was great. The effort was great. Let's talk about how we can maybe do this better next time or not miss this gap. I think that's huge in dealing with that age bracket.
I think I agree with everything you just said. I think that this is a big problem in the generation right now, period, is defensiveness, right? Mm-hmm. People have been beat up so bad and criticized so bad at home, right? In relationships, in life in general, that their first response is not to yield or to listen, right? Their first response is not to communicate. Their first response is to, it's a one-way street from me back to you. And the first thing that's coming back to you is, I didn't do it. Mm-hmm. But I told Joe, and it's Joe, right? I mean, it's always somebody else and clear myself first, right? And people have a really hard time understanding that communication is more than just talking to you to tell you did something wrong, all right? Or let's fix it. And I think you said something really cool, which I try to do in my business as well, is I'm trying really hard not to pick on the person when there's a problem. I'm trying to deal with the issue and solve the issue and then move on without pointing out a person, unless it's something catastrophic.
Right.
I mean, if it's a big, big deal that's dangerous or immoral or it puts my business in jeopardy in a way, now I got to deal with that person. But one of the things that I don't need to do is expose that person's failure to a ton of other people. Right. Right. Because that just affects their whole, reputation and which then feeds into what you just talked about, defense, right? That's why people are so defensive in life. Yeah. And the criticism or the coaching is an investment. That's what we always tell them, it's a time, it's an investment for good, So I think that's just not something that they're used to in this culture with everything that happened with COVID and the social media platforms, the in-person communication, talking, relationship piece is just not the norm. What, Jeff, any situations, circumstances that you can cite, like real life, the way people have treated each other, like real life stuff where you've seen this in a couple different ways, which I'm sure some are pretty funny. Any thoughts?
There's countless examples. I think to build off of what you were saying, I think the generation of people that we are talking about and that like work for us, for example, it's a generation, can't generalize, obviously, but where they come from families, maybe broken families, which is more common now than it was before, back when I was little, and also families that where both parents work. So you have a generation of youngsters now who have grown up seeking attention because both parents are working, they're busy. Maybe it's not a non-traditional home situation. They're being juggled back and forth between the aunt's house, the neighbor's house, the mom's house, whatever it might be. So there's this underlying desire for attention. It's human nature, but it's more prevalent now because of the busyness. Like, when I was little, my mom stayed home. So until I was 5, my mom was home with me. So that for age 5, I went to school and then she started working part-time. But I didn't have to fight for her attention. She was at home and we were home all day doing stuff. It was probably the opposite. I was probably sick of her. So, I mean,
well, that's a separate conversation.
Yeah. So you have that in baseline.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, mom.
Hey, Mom.
I mean,
This is your hey mom moment on television. Hi mom.
Right. So I think you have that component of dealing with this generation. And you also have, they're in a world that is highly critical and negative.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a societal problem in general, but then also the social media component that wasn't there when I was little. And that is where, they make a comment on something and immediately 10 people jump on them and say, oh, I can't believe you said that. Or, I don't know, stuff they post of like, hey, check out my new outfit. And then you got, one friend says, oh, it looks great. And then you got 10 other that say, no, you're ugly or whatever. And that, so it's groomed this generation to immediately be defensive. Like even when you're trying to be nice to them or trying to guide them through a situation
or compliment them.
Yeah,
exactly. They don't know how to take it.
No.
It blows their minds. They kind of look at you like you got three heads, and
because no one compliments them and teaches them.
It's foreign, they're ready for they're ready to be told that was wrong or you suck or whatever it might be. So in the pizza shop world, and I have found that with the staff that it really, to your point, it kind of blows their mind when you give them positive reinforcement or something. But I have found that works well. And there's a gap, especially with me being my age and the girl employees. They don't know how to handle me as far as like my personality or things I might say, or they don't know me. But like I have found it works really well of saying, hey, you did awesome at what you were doing here. Like that's the best looking one I've seen today that you just made. Or something, just random things like that. Or, dude, you're really doing well with those. I can't believe how quickly you did that. That's faster than I could do it. And it creates this like normalcy that we're not at a different level. Like we are experienced, we're older, but we're kind of on the same.
Yeah, field. You're treating people like people,
right?
And it doesn't matter. You're not allowing there to be a social meter. Yes. That's like, I talked about that in another episode recently that it doesn't matter if you come from nothing and you're poor or you're a billionaire, right? We're still the same people. Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm going to treat those two people with respect and as human beings, right? Because we're all the same. It doesn't make us better. And ultimately in God's eyes, he loves us all the same. Right.
Right.
And so, that's really interesting when you talk about social media and we talk about communication. That's what we're talking about, right? We're going to share a couple, the two things we talked about last time and the two other points real quick here. But this week specifically, I decided, I text my son, Denton, who's 15, and like half the time he responds to my text, it just irritates me beyond belief. I'm like, dude, did you get my text? I don't know. I'm like, what? Did you get it or not? Hold on a minute. Oh, yeah. Well, why didn't you tell me you got it? Why didn't you respond? Oh, I don't know. I mean, that's classic. He hasn't figured out that I don't know is not an answer yet. He's 15. We're trying to get him to understand that when you're asked a question, I don't know is not the answer, right? But at the end of the day, right, he's about half the time he pays attention, but he's on Snapchat. Right, he's snapping pictures and he'll making faces, and stuff in the car and on the road and just sending random stuff. Right, so I'm like, yeah, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get a Snapchat account. So I've got a Snapchat account. Right, made my little avatar. Took me about 30 minutes to make this cool looking avatar with gray hair and like kind of grayish black, pushed back and like goatee. And I would have made the body much more svelte like myself, but I couldn't. He looked kind of malnourished a little. He needed a little bit more beef, but it wasn't an option in the software, so I couldn't help it. But anyway, I picked out the fit. I mean, I got the tennis shoes, the jeans, the jacket, the whole gig. And so I'm on there and I start sending him messages through Snapchat. And I'm like, oh, friends, look at all these people. It says they're my friends. And boom, 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 boom. I'm starting to send people that he knows, like, pictures of like snap things and like the little cartoon, whatever they are, the emojis. I'm popping these out everywhere. Like, hey, awesome, wonderful, cool, hands in the air. And somehow, I don't know, I thought that I was clicking somebody I knew, and I'm picking him up from carpool the other day, him and Simone, who I drive home. She's a little bit younger than him. And Denton's like, Dad, what are you doing on Snap? You're out of control. He's like, Dad, you can't. And so Simone in the back seat says, yeah. She's like, you're snapping like all my friends at church. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, my girlfriend was like, hey, this guy is snapping me. Why is this guy Snapchatting me? And I'm in like school. And how do you know this guy? So this is amazing. And she's laughing at me. I'm like, I said, I'm so sorry. I said, I thought it was some dude I knew. It was his last name. I'm like, oh, I know him. Click. So the point being that I jumped into a communication situation that I still don't understand. And I have decided I probably don't need to be in this world, because the first thing that happened was my son walked outside the other day. My wife and I were in the car, rolled down the window and said, you joined chat. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, Dad, people hook up and meet like you meet women on chat. And I'm like, he says this in front of my wife. And I'm like, what? What? I said, you're meeting women on chat, on Snap? You're meeting women? Well, no, I'm not meeting women, but I meet people on there. What are you doing on there? And I'm like, well, I thought that I could connect with you and, talk to you. But my point is, when we talk about communication, I realize this is a whole different planet. Like,
oh my goodness,
the way that thing works and what you're supposed to do and not do, there's proper etiquette. And that was like, Dad, you can't just send my friend a thing with a picture that goes, awesome. Like, what are you doing? Like, so, all right. So anyway, for those of you who are listening, you probably can get up or go to the bathroom or change your underwear. I'm not sure from laughing so hard. But anyway, it's a very real thing. And it's a very real sign of communication.
Yes. Being
done right. And being misunderstood. And there's an example of misunderstood. I got some little girl thinking I'm stalking her. Like, who's this dude with gray hair saying, hey?
This reiterates why communication is so important.
Yes.
Is understanding how communication has evolved.
Yeah. What are the rules to play in certain areas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, I digressed a little bit but it all has to do with communication. So just as a reminder, last time we talked about two things. You're forgetting that not everyone sees the world like you. That was one of the problems with communication, right? You forget that your view is your view. And just because you're comfortable with it doesn't mean everyone else sees it the same way. That's a problem with communication. You have to learn that there's other views. Secondly, that communicating with wrong methods, wrong responses, and communicating the wrong time can also be a problem. Okay. So this time I want to talk about a third point. There's a third and a fourth point I want to talk about today. The third point is going beyond hearing to listening, because you have to take action. So we talked about that quote earlier when it talked about that most people don't listen to understand, they listen to reply, right? And so what I want to point out to you is, if you would think with me for just a second, have you ever been with someone or in a group and there was a subject that was talked about, right? Like there was a discussion with 4, 5, 6 people, friends. You guys talked about something. People were supposed to do something. Maybe someone had a particular thing they were going to follow up with, right? And this thing is over. And then you see the person and you start to talk to them about it. And they're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Right? Well, weren't you were there with us, right? Like we all talked about this. Yeah, but I don't remember this, right? Well, this is the difference between hearing and listening. I want you to understand, I learned this when I was much younger, right? There is a difference between hearing something. In fact, you probably heard this when you were growing up. I would imagine that I told you there's a difference between hearing and learning. Did I ever have that conversation with you?
Yes.
Yeah. Whitney and I have had lots of conversations and counseling sessions, although she's the one who's got the psychology degree, probably so she could deal with me. But listening and hearing are two different things, right? You can hear lots of words. People in that setting could have heard all those conversations going on, but they might have been on their phone or might have been thinking about, the steak they were about to eat or where they were going to go afterwards and hang out or the thing they're going to tomorrow. And they didn't listen, right? The listening piece is the attachment, right? It's like me backing up my vehicle to attach to my trailer with ATVs to go on a wild ride up to the sand dunes, okay, in Michigan. It's all great. I have the vehicle, I have the trailer with the ATVs on it. I back the truck up to the trailer, and everything is there to get to the sand dunes, right? And it's great. But if I pull away without attaching to the trailer, I'm not going to ride at the sand dunes. It's that simple, right? And this is the difference between hearing and listening. When you listen, you're backing under and attaching to what is important and what's being said. You're hooking it, right? You're locking in on it and applying it through your head into who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. That's listening. Hearing is a bunch of noise that goes by your ears, okay? And so I think that's the third piece when we talk about communication, that we have to understand that we need to listen. We have to hook it and make it part of who we are in order to have effective communication, right? There is definitely something that's there. You guys have any comments around that, around situations at work that have happened where this kind of thing has happened? People have looked you in the eye. You said, hey, yeah, go do this, make the dough. This is how, whatever, do this, or I need you to do those things. And then like 10 minutes later, you come back and they're over here like doing something else, dropping chicken and instead of doing this. I mean, any real life scenarios. And then I guess the second piece to that before we move on would be anything that you've seen like that you can share, but also why do you think it happens in addition? So either one of those angles would be great.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that times the listening and the hearing effectiveness comes into play learning style, which you don't, unless you know that about yourself or you specifically know that about someone else, that can be a barrier in communication. So like audible information, like talking information in the moment, in that split second for myself, I'm like, oh, that sounds great. That makes total sense. I get it. Okay. But then like, unless it's something super specific, 30 minutes later, I might not remember half of it. And so for me, like having a visual aid, something visual or something hands-on with the words, like a presentation of just someone speaking at me, it's very unlikely I'll remember much of it. But if there's a visual aid where they're drawing a picture with it, or, you know, something going on or an experiment, they're showing something, and that's something that we started incorporating in the business, and that Whitney just did the other day, was in communicating with the staff is doing a group text scenario, because texting can be effective to reach everyone because we're not all there at the same time.
Yep.
That's an anomaly if we're all there. That's the once every couple months employee meeting.
Yeah.
So that's not Realityville. So we do it through the group text and we can ask information. And Whitney did one yesterday where explaining a scenario and a procedure, and did it with a video, recorded a video, and then use that. So the kids are hearing the information she's saying, but also seeing. And there's I think there's something like a brain connection with that.
Well, you make a good point. And I mean, what Jeff said about style, that is a very, very relevant thing to communication. There are different learning styles. Mm-hmm. Some people just learn, those of you who are listening, right? Some of you know, as we talk about this, that some of you can just hear something and absorb it. Some of you need to see it and absorb it. Some of you need to touch it and hear it and see it, or pieces of, right? You need to be able to like look at it and touch it, or read it physically, that kind of a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Or do it. Like some people do well with actual writing. My wife still likes to write notes. She likes to write things down. And I've told her, well, why don't you like type that on your computer, or why don't you, and she's like, because And I was the same way. I took notes in school. For many of you who are listening, you're like, what are you talking about? You took notes. Yeah. Pencil and paper. And I would have, 20 pages of notes when I had a psych test. And I would stay up and read my notes before I went to bed. By the way, for those of you who are in school right now, here's a tip about college and learning. And she'll tell you this is true. You should study the last thing before you go to bed. Because if you review your notes, the last thing before you go to sleep, you'll be amazed when you get up in the morning how much of that stuff you're going to know. Am I right?
The handwriting.
It processes overnight.
Yeah. The handwriting thing is, I'm the same on that with writing.
Yeah.
But I think I have a kind of funny story about saying one thing and what the other individual is saying they get, and then going and doing it.
Yeah.
So years ago, we had an employee who, there's a task that we do, and we cut whole potatoes into wedges, and then we fry them, and they're called JoJo's. They're like potato wedges, basically. But we cut them in the store. And I said to this individual, like, hey, can you go cut JoJo's? And they said, yeah. I said, okay, you feel confident doing that? Yeah, we've done that. We've done it a few times.
Did they say
understood?
Did they say who's JoJo?
No, they knew. They knew what I meant, the potato wedges.
Go cut JoJo.
So usually what one would do is go grab the box of whole potatoes, carry them back to the cutter, cut them. They fall into a bucket. They get filled with water, and they get, the whole box goes back in and the bucket goes back in, labeled, the whole deal. So
this was amazing.
About 5 minutes in, I don't like to hover because, I show you, we do it together. I check in with you the next time you do it. You tell me you got it. Like, I don't like to hover. I like to trust people and, have a tolerance for some errors. It's okay. It's like part of the learning process. So I check in and I see this individual back there in the appropriate location. And I see parts of it. Like, I see the bucket, I see potatoes falling out of the cutter, and I'm like, okay. And then I check back in another time. I'm like, why is this? This is not a long task. This happens pretty quickly. So I walk back, and then I realize I see this individual walking back into the cooler, and I said, hey, everything going okay? Where yeah, it's great. And I realized this individual is going into our cooler, into the box of potatoes every time, grabbing a couple potatoes, shoving them into their pockets and carrying them out, doing one or two, walking back into the cooler, grabbing some potatoes, putting them into their, completely missed the step where we grab the whole box of potatoes and bring them out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that is resourceful, but let me show you this step that makes this way easier. So for me, something that I heard on another podcast one time was I think it was Craig Groeschel. It talks about you can't do what you don't define. And that for me, locked in with this particular age group and this particular functioning in a business. Because if I'm thinking, okay, yeah, mentally that makes sense, do this task. But defining out the 5 to 10 steps that go along with that task looks very different in my brain than it does in their brain if I just simply say the command, hey, do this. And also they will say, my experience with this age group also is they will say hey, do you feel comfortable doing that? Yeah. Yep. Okay. Can you tell me how you're going to do that? Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll just do this and this. And then I do that. Right. And then I do this. So then we realize there's still questions, and it's we had to walk through defining it to get to those questions. So they don't really they won't confirm or ask questions out of the gate. I find they'll just say yeah, I think so. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
This is an example of the illusion that understanding has happened.
Yes.
Right? Which is from the quote earlier.
Yes.
Right. In your mind, this is what you knew you wanted. In their mind, whole different ball game. Right.
Yes.
And I've experienced that this week as well in circumstances. I have a story about communication and clarity that I don't think I have the time to go into today. But it's a good one. It's about my brother and me doing work for him when I was 15 and fixing his floor in his basement. It may take more time than I have to share it with you, but trust me, it's a good story. So you're living out and explaining the difference, right, between what we think and you walk away from that conversation with the employee with the illusion that, hey, it's a simple task. This is in my head. This is what's going on. That's not what happened, because their vision and the look that they had was completely different. I think one of the things that's really, really important here is that when we talk about communication, we talk about hearing and listening, right? That there's also attached to that as part of this point 3 is a sense of urgency and a need for priority, right? Because I think that it's a challenge today in many cases for people to have a sense of urgency, right? And I had a guy that was my mentor. His name was Bill Zimmerman. I've mentioned him maybe before on a podcast or two. But he provided me an opportunity when I was in my early 20s to come in and work for him in sales. And he actually started my career. In another podcast that's coming around reshaping our life vibe and inventory, I talk about the fact that you have to take opportunities and look for them. Find people in your life where there are opportunities, right? And that all has to do with communication, okay? But my point is that one of the things that Bill did for me was he helped start my career. But the thing that is most important that I want to share right now is he gave me the opportunity. But the other thing he taught me was a sense of urgency. I mean, he was like, John, you can't leave. Like if you're following up with somebody and you're supposed to be getting a contract signed that's worth, $500,000. And if you don't call that person today, when you have the information you need, or go get it done today when you can, tomorrow something could happen. That person may get fired. Someone else they may quit and they would bring another person in. Something could happen to you. Something could happen to the economy. A competitor could come in and push a proposal forward and beat your deal, and you could lose the deal. And I was like, whoa. Like, you don't think about the importance of priority and a sense of urgency. And so that's a huge thing when you're dealing with life, is that if you have the ability to do something right now, don't procrastinate it, right? Mm-hmm. Or say something, do it, communicate it clearly, because the longer that there's time between a circumstance, right, where there's not communication, it leaves a gap for people to wonder, right? It's like communication with a customer, right? If I have a problem with a customer, I need to deal with that right away. If I don't stay in touch with that person and let them know, hey, I don't have the answer yet, but I want you to know I didn't forget you, right? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, this time is passing and they have the ability to start to really wonder and make up stuff in their head about what's going on. So again, back to the communication piece, right? So important. And, how many minutes a day do you think we're wasting with regard to our time that we have to do these things, right? So you have 1,440 minutes a day. So every day when you get up, your day, your 24-hour period has 1,440 minutes that you get to choose how you're going to spend them, okay? Over the course of a year, you have over 500,000 of them, 525 plus thousand minutes in just 1 year that you get to choose. So how many of those get wasted? How many of those get blown up when you could be doing something valuable with your time, communicating with people, doing something that really, really makes sense, right? And then the last thing that I want to talk about today in the episode is, and point 4 about communication that's hugely crucial for us, and it is a big problem today, is tolerance, right? The tolerance with people, right? It's and let me just define that for you, because this is huge. Tolerance is the willingness to accept, endure, or allow something. Okay, often something you may not like or agree with, without hostility or undue discomfort. Okay, now I want you to think about that. It's you being willing to accept something, go along with something, endure something that you might not like, you may not agree, right? But you're not going to be hostile, and hopefully you're not going to allow it to cause you too much anxiety. This is a big problem today. If effective communication is going to happen, there has to be tolerance. And I would put next to the word tolerance, teachable. You have to be teachable, right? You have to have a willingness to be open and let somebody teach you something new. This is not something that is common ground today, right? And I'm going to ask you guys, Jeff, maybe in a second, you can comment on that, about people being teachable or the way people are responding when you try to teach. These kind of things. Tolerance is this is why I think our world is in such a mess, because if you don't agree with what I think or follow what I want you to do, then I kind of cut you off and I don't have any tolerance for you, and you're not in my world anymore. Like I can't be friends with you and talk to you because you don't agree with me. And that's very real, to the point of hostility and rioting. I mean, these are real things that happen. And to be an effective communicator, you have to have tolerance, because you have to be willing to hear somebody else's perspective. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to do it, but you can at least respect and hear what they have to say. And then after you've heard them and listened to them, you can now then turn around and give a response in the way that you feel, in a respectful way. We can be two different people, believe in two completely black and white different things, right? Like completely opposite ends of the spectrum, but we can still communicate and respect each other as people. So that's number 4. The tolerance piece is very important for effective communication. Jeff, you have any thoughts around some things you've seen internally with employees where you've not seen that tolerance, where you have seen it? What are your thoughts there?
I think in our workplace setting, I think there's a higher level. I believe there's a higher level of tolerance for the employees, but for each other, in a scenario where they're all on the clock. There's person A might not really love the way person B does it, but they're there to work and make their money. Whereas that maybe in a social media platform could be very different. Mm-hmm. It's also, I find that people are more tolerant of each other when they're right in front of each other. Mm-hmm. I would say it's much easier to be hostile to someone else's views or someone else's ways of thinking about things or their communication or what they say when you're behind a computer screen.
Through a screen, yeah.
Anyone can do that.
Somebody can't grab you by the throat.
Right.
I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, but
right. And the whole topic of tolerance and that concept really surfaced, I think, in some of the recent presidential elections. Like we saw firsthand in our family and friend network on the social media platforms and stuff, hostility from different viewpoints. It's like, it doesn't need to be that way. But I think who knows, the psychology degree would probably help you decipher as to, why some people are more intolerant than others. I don't really know all the reasons, but I do like the big one that the concept of being teachable. And that is something that is very, I think, is a paramount with good communication and just life development in general, is being, no matter how good you think you are at something or how much experience you have, there's probably always going to be someone who knows a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And always being willing to hear a different way of doing it or seeing something a different way. It doesn't mean you have to, that becomes gospel for you, but it's good to be open to fresh perspective and different ways of doing things, because that's how that being teachable breeds knowledge, and it breeds efficiency, and it breeds you become more valuable as an employee, as a friend, as a family member. They all work together. They go hand in hand. And I think in our business, I'd say the staff is generally pretty teachable to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes from, they see us in their working. They see us, you and me, interacting as husband and wife and as friends and how we get along. Mm-hmm. And they trust us because they see us doing it, and we've built credibility with them.
Yeah, I think that having credibility allows you to be able to invest in someone and lends them to be more open to being teachable. I think that's why there's a lot of struggle with this generation yielding to each other and being teachable. Is I don't think there's a lot of people that are operating from a standpoint of wanting to teach them and not having something attached to it, So it's like, hey, even if you are doing not so great at this task or this piece, like, you still have value. It's okay. Maybe this just isn't your thing, So, and that's okay. No problem. So I think that really helps with them being teachable and being willing to tolerate something that isn't their favorite topic or isn't something that is a strong point of theirs or isn't a criticism they want to hear. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think I did want to circle back though to something you said previously about urgency. I think something I've noticed that I've learned along the way going through kind of where some of the listeners have been and then seeing in some of the team that we work with is urgency is important, but not every single thing is the same level of priority. Mm-hmm. So it's a struggle and I think like a big learning curve to understand, okay, I have all these things and I have all these things that are important and I'm a person that likes to get everything done, but I also feel overwhelmed and anxious. It's like, okay, all those things are important, but let's take a step back on the lens, like zoom out just for a second and then getting the skill to understand, okay, which things are very important right now, which things are important today before the day's over, which things can roll to tomorrow and need to be done by the end of the week. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, I think that is like a big gap that I don't feel the skill is there or taught a lot. So I think urgency is super important, but as to not become overwhelmed and have tons of anxiety, understanding urgency and priority also has kind of different categories, if you will. Mm-hmm. So,
and one last comment on the teachable, it came to me is that, you know, for your audience, we've discussed, you know, quite a few different things. You know, you have things on social media that your audience deals with. We have pressures in society, you know, with each other, political stuff, workplace stuff. And I think a lot of it stems from this generation has trouble trusting what they're seeing or what do you believe anymore? Like that's a world that we didn't, like AI and doctored photos and fake videos and we didn't have to deal with that. And they're so you get them in a workplace environment or you get them in a particular setting and establishing trust is huge for them. That's when they become teachable. That's when they're open to, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? Yep. Or, hey, what about, you know, you get down a path with some folks and you break down barriers and you communicate with them and you hear they open up to you and you can help them. And when you open up, you know, something that's huge for us is you get them to a point where they trust you, they respect you, and then they're open to hearing your thoughts on things like with God or with, you know, anything like that. It gets up to a perfect place where you want them. You build trust, and then ultimately that's going to build relationship. And I think, you know, as we come down to the end of this episode, I think one of the things that we're going to see in the days ahead with all of the the evolution of AI and, you know, how speed, I mean, with the tech background that I have, you know, understanding the power of the technology and systems and the progression of how much more rapid things just, it's worse than a snowball going downhill, right? It's way faster than that. Like we used to say, it's like, you know, a snowball, right? It would roll and get bigger. And it's just unbelievably much faster with the use of technology. But I think with the advent of all of that happening, I think that what we're going to see is the potential turn where people are going to start to prefer to be in person with each other because if I'm in person with you, I know you aren't AI. You follow me? If I'm literally talking to you and it's relational and I know you're not AI. I watched videos the other day on Facebook. This is no joke. I watched some videos on Facebook. There were 4 of them that were in this cut that I was watching. And at the end of it, it said, these were all AI. There was nothing in any one of these videos, the people or anything you saw, like, or anything that was said that was a real person. It was all generated through AI. And I'm just telling you, I mean, I'm not a trained, you know, expert on looking at the screen and seeing something blip there. Oh, that's AI. But I'm telling you, like, I had no idea that it was AI. And so I do think it's going to change. And it's a discussion that we probably should have. This is a podcast that we probably should have about it to help people understand it. I mean, there are good things about AI.
that are going to change our lives and make our lives better. And there are things that, if used just like anything, if corrupted and used in a wrong way, are going to hurt people in a very bad way. So, I just want to come down to the end. There's so much on this subject that we've talked about with communication. I want to remind you who are listening, the 4 things that we've talked about with communication in both of these episodes. Number 1, you're forgetting that not everyone sees the world like you. So in order to be a better communicator, we've broke that down and talked about the fact that not everyone sees the world the way you do. We also talked about the fact that you got to communicate with the right method and the right response at the right time, right? If you do those things wrong, your communication is going to be messed up. So there are times when you want in person, right? You want to talk to somebody. And then there are other times that you can text. And then there are other times that, you need to be face to face. There are times you need a phone call, and there are times you need to text. And a lot of people today, you get messed up with texting everything. I get texts from people that are like just pages long. I'm like, dude, pick up the phone. Because there's so much possibility to misunderstand somebody. And if I'm in a bad mood, I might make their text a bad thing. Mm-hmm. And now I got a problem with them in my communication, right? The third thing is go beyond hearing to listening. We talked about that today. Listening is the hook where you grab what somebody's saying and apply it into your life and think about it. And then lastly, to be effective, you have to have tolerance, right? You got to have tolerance to listen to other people, to hear what they have to say, and to be teachable. And I want to thank you I want to thank Jeff and Whitney. Thank you guys for being here for both these episodes. These guys will probably be back as we have some other episodes dealing with things that you're dealing with in your world and that we all deal with. I would tell you, respect, yield to others and others' opinions. That's the word of the day today is yield. You have to be willing to communicate to be able to communicate properly. You have to yield. And you've got to be willing to let other people go first. You've got to be willing to listen to them, let them have their turn, be teachable, right? And be willing to do some things different. I would urge you, as far as actions that you can do, I would urge you to just take these things and try and put some of them into place, right? Take some of these things with regard to being tolerant with somebody. Maybe you can look at some circumstances in your life currently where there are some things happening that you just really don't have tolerance, or you don't get along with somebody, and you just kind of write people off. Maybe you could put into action trying to be more tolerant. Maybe you could put into action when you see the yield sign, right? Remember that sign and put that into action in your life to improve your communication skills. Because once again, the whole reason we did this session was because of the fact that if you don't learn to communicate, it's not that life won't go on for you. It's that life won't go on and be all it could be for you. Because with the appropriate communication and your interaction with people, your life can really, really go places, and dreams can come true if you learn to communicate the appropriate way with people. So I want to ask you if you would please follow us, like us. We also are out on YouTube with the videos and the shorts at Talk Level Up. And, watch the podcast, tell people about it, have them come in and join us on our discussions. And next time we're going to be talking about redo my vibe. We're going to talk about how in life we need to take a look at our vibe and have it just completely reset and look at where the heck is our life going anyway. And that's what we're going to talk about next time. We're going to talk about how our lives get into a place where we are in a rut, and we've fallen into it. We kind of lose perspective, and we have dreams, but we're not pursuing them. We want something different, but nothing's happening. We're not doing anything. So I want to invite you back for that episode. And I want to tell you, until next time, please do something. And remember that there's only one you. You're very unique. And I'm John, and I'm out.